Hi there, welcome back to your favorite deep dive show on stories contemporary and consequential for India. This week I picked two. The Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, or the RSS, completed a centenary of its existence on October 2, as Dussehra happens to be their foundation day. If you look at it from their point of view, it's poetic that an RSS product is the Prime Minister of the country, Narendra Modi, at this momentous occasion. The hits and misses of RSS are what we are going to analyze. Second, a searchlight on what's happening in Europe vis-a-vis India. A pattern emerged past month of Europe's India pivot. It is more a pivot against the United States, in fact. But since Uncle Sam does not care, we go deep and reflect on the changes and the challenges. Let's get going.
हिंदू समाज का बल संपन्न होना, शील संपन्न होना, संगठित होना इस देश के एकता, एकात्मता, सुरक्षा और विकास की गारंटी है। क्योंकि हिंदू समाज सनातन काल से यहां चलते आया है, वो इस देश का उत्तरदायी समाज है, रिस्पॉन्सिबल सोसाइटी है।
This week marked the centenary of RSS, or the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, on October 2. It was happenstance that the RSS Foundation Day fell on the birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. And in some ways, it's poetic that in its 100th year, an RSS product is the Prime Minister of the country. I had briefly touched the issue of RSS in August when Prime Minister Modi mentioned the organization in his Independence Day speech from the ramparts of the Red Fort for the first time. By all measures, the RSS is a powerful socio-political organization, perhaps the most powerful in the country today. With at least half the Union Cabinet having been groomed at the RSS shakhas and a similar proportion in at least 20 state governments or union territories, that's some achievement for the Sangh, described by Prime Minister as the world's largest NGO. Between the founding in 1925 by Keshav Baliram Hedgewar and the present under the stewardship of Mohan Bhagwat, the RSS has spawned 50 or more affiliate social service organizations and grown to about 85,000 shakhas or branches with millions as active workers. Along with the sister organizations including the BJP, the Sangh Parivar is variously seen as a communal right-wing force of extremist Hindus or the sword arm that is at the vanguard of defending the faith. You make your pick as per your own ideological persuasion. The birth of the RSS as a Hindu voice had happened in a certain backdrop. The Muslim League had been formed in 1907 in the aftermath of the division of Bengal, which was essentially spearheaded by the Muslims of the province. Jinnah had risen through the ranks of the Congress and became the face of the Lucknow Pact in 1916, seen as an act of appeasement by the Hindus. Having returned from South Africa, Mahatma Gandhi, still Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, was just about finding his feet in the freedom struggle with the Champaran and Kheda Satyagrahas in 1917 and 1918 respectively. A young Hedgewar was a member of the Congress and actively participating in the freedom movement as a follower of Bal Gangadhar Tilak. In 1920, when the British decided to abolish the Ottoman Caliphate in Turkey, the Muslims of India banded to launch what is called the Khilafat movement. It had nothing to do with India's freedom struggle to begin with. It was rooted in the idea of mobilizing the Muslim masses to stop the British from disbanding the Ottoman Caliphate, as they saw the Caliph as their temporal head. Enter Mahatma Gandhi. He thought, many believe foolishly, that this was a good opportunity to co-opt the Muslim masses into the freedom struggle. Till now, while there were hundreds and thousands of Muslims who were participating in the Swarajya Andolan, but not at mass scale, Gandhi launched the non-cooperation movement in support of Khilafat. Like many who thought that this was injecting of religion in politics and should have been avoided, Hedgewar too was disappointed. His ideological mentor, Tilak, believed that Muslims should be drawn into the freedom struggle for India on the issue of India's independence and Swaraj, not that of a foreign power. Definitely not on the basis of religion. Tilak believed that Congress backing of the Khilafat movement would only breed extraterritorial religious fanaticism among the Muslims. Young Keshav thought, what's in it for India? It's not as if religion was abolished by the British Caliphate. It was the political power of the Ottoman Turks which was at stake. Why should it have inflamed the Muslim passions in the first place? And remember, Kemal Ataturk, when he came to power, abolished the caliphate anyway. RSS records suggest that despite being not very high in the hierarchy of the Congress, Hedgewar did manage a meeting with Mahatma Gandhi and confronted him on his Muslim appeasement. When he asked why the Mahatma harped only on Hindu-Muslim unity when there were other minorities like the Christians, the Parsis and the Jews, etc. in the country, Gandhi is said to have told him that this will secure the friendly attitude of Muslims towards our country. They can then be persuaded to side wholeheartedly with us in the nationalist struggle, unquote. Hedgewar was not convinced, yet he jumped headlong. He was arrested on charges of sedition for a speech he made in Nagpur. He pleaded his own case, prompting the judge to mention that his defense was even more seditious than his original speech. He was slapped a year of rigorous imprisonment with the option of seeking pardon, which he refused, spending the year in Nagpur Central Jail instead. On coming out, one felicitation, at least one, had Motilal Nehru presiding over the event. While Hedgewar was serving his prison sentence, Mopla revolt broke out in Kerala in 1921. It began as a rebellion by the Muslim peasantry against oppressive British taxation, but turned against the landlords who were predominantly Hindu. The Mopla violence peaked into an anti-Hindu pogrom, and by the time it was over, it left hundreds of Hindu temples desecrated, defiled and destroyed. Thousands of Hindus massacred, many more converted at the sword. Their women raped or converted. It was the worst that Hindu community had faced at the hands of an aggressive Muslim mobilization since the Bengal partition. It left deep scars in the Hindu psyche, not just in Kerala but across the country. And just as Hedgewar came out of jail in 1922, he was disappointed yet again with Mahatma Gandhi withdrawing the non-cooperation movement because of the Chauri Chaura incident. He in fact felt cheated. Tilak had passed away by then. Hedgewar must have felt ideologically orphaned in Congress. Next year, 1923, saw the coming out of a book called Hindutva by Vinayak Damodar Savarkar. It was a pamphlet scribbled inside the Yeravada jail in Pune, where Savarkar had been incarcerated for a life term after a decade in the infamous Andaman cellular jail. In an already combustible situation post the Mopla rebellion, the book left a deep impression on Hedgewar's mind, and he thought there was no option left but to organize the Hindu society. A platform was needed to provide a moat, a protective shield against an increasingly aggressive and assertive Muslim community. Thus was born the RSS in 1925. 20 years after the partition of Bengal, a good 18 years after the Muslim League, a decade after the Lucknow Pact, and 5 years after Gandhi's mistake of fanning Muslim fundamentalism by joining the Khilafat movement. Since then, over a century, the RSS has become the sole voice of the Hindu right. Its exposition of India, that is Bharat, as a Hindu Rashtra is not just a fringe project anymore. It is a living expression of a great mass of citizens who believe and assert the civilizational roots of this land in Hinduism. Mohan Bhagwat helms the Sangh as its Sarsang Chalak in the present. He was the youngest to become its chief when he was just 59, considered young for the business of politics and power. Like Prime Minister Modi, Bhagwat is the first post-partition, post-independence born leader of the RSS. And that has reflected in the manner he has steered the ship, moderating the extremities, fine-tuning the philosophical moorings, softening the edges.
अपनी संविधान सम्मत न्याय व्यवस्था को पवित्र सर्वश्रेष्ठ मानकर उसके निर्णय हमको पालन करने चाहिए। उनके निर्णयों पर प्रश्न चिन्ह नहीं लगाना चाहिए। ज्ञानवापी के बारे में हमारी कुछ श्रद्धाएं हैं, परंपरा से चलती आई, हम कर रहे, ठीक है, परंतु हर मस्जिद में शिवलिंग क्यों देखना?
समाज, देश, संस्कृति और राष्ट्र के नाते हम एक ही है, हम अलग नहीं है, हम विविध भी नहीं है। सबकी अपनी अपनी विशिष्टताएं हैं, उनकी श्रद्धाएं हैं, महापुरुष है, पूजा के स्थान है। मन वचन कर्म से आपस में इनकी अवमानना नहीं होनी चाहिए, इसकी चिंता सबने करनी चाहिए।
ये जो जाति और वर्ण नाम की चीज है वो कभी व्यवस्था थी, आज वो व्यवस्था है नहीं, वो अव्यवस्था बन गई है। और जाति और वर्ण व्यवस्था के नाम पर जाति और वर्णों के अभिमान अपना खेल खेल रहे हैं। वास्तव में एक काल सुसंगत नई व्यवस्था नया रूप लेकर कोई आनी चाहिए जो शोषण मुक्त और समता युक्त रहे।
What distinguishes Bhagwat from his predecessors is his modernist views and reformist outlook, which have sought to adapt the traditionally conservative Hindu rite to contemporary realities. The most visible and rather literal example of which is his decision to reform the uniform, or Ganvesh as it is called within the Sangh, moving from the shorts to pants. The nikkar had been turned into a pejorative by the left liberal dominated media since independence. Just one example of how he not only sidesteps but takes the orthodoxy of the RSS head on. He has consistently advocated for discarding the caste system, declaring that the Varn and the caste system itself, while perhaps functional in ancient times, should be entirely abolished today, as they perpetuate discrimination. Bhagwat's modernist credentials shined in his 2023 comments on the LGBTQ community in an interview to the organizer, in which he affirmed that the LGBTQ individuals are a natural part of society, their existence biological and historically accepted in Hindu traditions, deserving private space and the right to live without interference. Unless you believe inclusivism is only about Muslim question, this was Bhagwat worldview at its best on the subject and could constitute Barack Obama talking points. Listen to this one on environment from his latest speech.
प्रचलित पद्धति जो है उसके दुष्परिणाम हमारे यहां भी दिखते हैं। अभी हाल में ही जो खबरें पिछले 1-2 साल से चल रही है, प्रत्यक्ष हम देख रहे हिमालय के क्षेत्र में कैसे चल रहा है। वर्षा का अनियमित होना तो सर्वदूर है, प्रकृति के प्रकोप भी बढ़ गए हैं, भूस्खलन होता है, अप्रत्याशित वर्षा होती है, हिम नदियां सूख रही है। ऐसे परिणाम गत 3-4 वर्षों में तीव्र होते चले जा रहे हैं। ये हिमालय हमारे लिए सुरक्षा की दीवार और दक्षिण पूर्व एशिया के लिए उसका पूरा जलस्रोत हिमालय से ही आता है। अगर प्रचलित विकास की पद्धति में से इन सारी बातों को और प्रोत्साहन मिलता हो होने के लिए तो उस नीति का हमको पुनर्विचार करना पड़ेगा, क्योंकि हिमालय की आज की अवस्था एक खतरे की घंटी बजा रही है।
Not the first time that he has spoken on climate change. It has formed a strong pillar of Bhagwat's reformist vision, blending Hindu dharma with ecological responsibility. He views the climate crisis as a real threat, exacerbated by materialism, advocating a dharmic lifestyle that nurtures nature rather than exploits it. The swipe at America was real. If everyone on the planet starts living the American way of life, we would need 5 Earths to meet the needs. A pattern emerges through Bhagwat's recent speeches and addresses in which he reimagines Hindu nationalism as egalitarian and futuristic. My own personal favorite is the manner in which, rather courageously, he discarded as irrelevant far-right portions of Golwalkar's bunch of thoughts, signaling a pivot from rigid ideology to adaptive principles. I was present in that session held at Vigyan Bhavan in New Delhi in 2018, and it caused quite a flutter among RSS cadres themselves. It takes a certain iconoclasm to be doing that. Perhaps the most visible sign of Bhagwat's modernist influence is his outreach to the Muslim community. In recent years, he has met with over 50 Muslim clerics and scholars in Delhi, that too multiple times. The idea is to have a constructive dialogue in the spirit of mutual understanding and trust building. I also remember attending one Bodhik, the intellectual engagement sessions that the RSS chief holds, in which Bhagwat enunciated on the Hindu-Muslim question. As in his public speeches, so in private. He was very clear about the imperatives of an Indian version of Islam that finds more commonalities with its Indian ethos than the Pakistani version, which has completely pivoted to the Arabic roots. He envisions a Hindu Rashtra that is inclusive, where Hindu denotes cultural nationality open to all, rejecting us versus them mentality and promoting harmony across faiths and religions. That's why, for example, in the immediate aftermath of the Ayodhya verdict, Bhagwat had said that RSS won't pick any other temple fight. He later asked for Hindu right wing to not look for a temple below every mosque. That was a strong message. That was also an act of personal courage, for he had to face some resistance from the deep end of the RSS pool, steeped as they are in old world conservatism. But subsequently, we have seen newer temple-mosque contests shaping up, Sambhal in Uttar Pradesh being the newsiest example. The extreme Hindu right is clearly out of sync with its leaders. Both Bhagwat and PM Modi have taken the Hindu political thought to lofty levels of statesmanship. The national vision encapsulated by the duo from Viksit Bharat to Vishwabandhu Bharat, drawing from its 5 millennia-old civilizational heritage, which is essentially Hindu, but inclusivist at the same time. A palimpsest on which layer upon layer of cultures kept settling. A patchwork quilt that is unique for its diversity, yet is woven with the same thread of unifying Hindu roots. Another example of the Hindu fringe being behind the curve came from his Dasahara speech. Bhagwat warned the hardliners against show of his strength using religious occasions. Should this apply to the Kanwar Yatra, for example? There's faith for sure, but there's an overlay now of an organized industry-scale mobilization. The way police forces in states like Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh are requisitioned to provide an official veneer is not good. The manner in which every year the Kanwar Yatra becomes a low-grade muscle-flexing exercise causing communal tensions is something which is completely out of place with Viksit Bharat ambitions. Modi and Bhagwat understand that. Yogi and the rest have to follow. Moving on.
For Europe, India is a pillar of certainty in an increasingly uncertain world. We know that authoritarian states are getting bolder, ignoring borders, threatening peace at sea. Now is the time to step up our security and defense cooperation on land, at sea and in space.
While the Trump administration has been going hammer and tongs against India, and we have explored the reasons in many earlier episodes, this month marked a breeze insofar as India-Europe relationship is concerned. You heard the Finnish President Alexander Stubb. He called India an emerging superpower which is not like Russia and China in a Bloomberg podcast. It was a very nuanced statement. His differentiation of India vis-a-vis Russia and China was a message to the United States. There's a quiet but unmistakable shift happening in Europe. It's about Europe, long seen as America's closest ally, slowly but surely recalibrating its strategic compass. And the pivot is happening towards India. Why? because Europe is in a pincer. On the one side is China-backed Russia, Dragon Bear as European strategic community calls them. And on the other is its own transatlantic partner, the United States, or more specifically, from the unpredictability of Donald Trump's America. Let's unpack this.
They've had a big fight, like two kids in a schoolyard. You know, they fight like hell. You can't stop them. Let them fight for about 2-3 minutes, then it's easy to stop them.
And then Daddy has to sometimes use strong language to
You have to use strong language. Every once in a while, you have to use a certain word.
This was NATO chief Mark Rutte trying to indulge with mercurial Trump. He got panned across Europe amid guffaws on how abject a surrender Europe was making to a bully United States. Not that this has stopped Trump from going after them. The American president has aggressively pushed for a Russia-Ukraine rapprochement, has berated NATO member states to up their defense spending, and taken unserviceable promises on American exports from the European Union. This has got Brussels worrying. Look at this BBC report. It says there's a growing concern in European policy circles. What if America turns off the switch on Europe's internet? Crazy as it sounds, it's rooted in a very real vulnerability. 3 American tech giants, Google, Microsoft, and Amazon, control about 70% of Europe's cloud infrastructure. That's the backbone of everything from hospitals to banking system to government services. In an era where data is sparse, this level of dependence is dangerous. And with Trump's track record of using economic tools as geopolitical weapons, the fear isn't entirely unfounded. What if a future White House decides to weaponize the cloud? What if critical data becomes inaccessible overnight? This fear is pushing Europe to look for alternatives. And India is emerging as a compelling one. You heard the Finnish president describe India as a rising superpower. More crucially, we are not trying to export any ideology or dominate global systems. Stubb's comments are not just a compliment, it was a message to Washington that Europe is diversifying its partnerships. India offers something rare in today's geopolitical landscape: scale, stability, and shared values. It's not authoritarian like China, nor revisionist like Russia. It's a country that believes in rules-based order, even if it does not always play by every Western rule. And Europe is taking notice. In September alone, Prime Minister Narendra Modi held 2 joint calls with top EU leadership, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and European Council President Antonio Costa. That's not routine diplomacy. That's a strategic courtship. The result, Brussels came out with a working paper, a strategic vision on EU's relationship with India going forward this month. A new strategic EU-India agenda that aims to deepen cooperation across trade, technology, defense, and climate. The language is telling. Europe wants to double down on partnerships rooted in shared interests and guided by common values. It wants to advance trade, investment, and talent mobility. And it wants to deepen industrial cooperation in defense. Listen to von der Leyen.
We are the 2 largest democracies in the world. Europe is already India's biggest trading partner. The potential is immense. A free trade agreement between the European Union and India would be the largest deal of its kind anywhere in the world. Europe is open for business, and we are ready to invest in our common future with India.
The joint communication takes forward the proposed EU-India security and defense partnership, launching negotiations for a security of information agreement to facilitate classified information exchange, which will support closer security and defense cooperation. Closer cooperation on the Indo-Pacific, addressing hybrid threats, space security, and intensifying engagement on Russia's war against Ukraine. These are other areas of focus. This isn't just talk. Europe is already India's biggest trading partner, and both sides are pushing to finalize a free trade agreement by the end of this year. On the defense front, India is buying more Rafale jets from France, more Safran engines, and even building submarines in collaboration with Germany. It's a two-way street. European companies like ASML, the Dutch semiconductor giant, are also eyeing India as a key partner. ASML CEO recently spent 2 hours in a one-on-one meeting with Prime Minister Modi, while complaining that it was nearly impossible to go get time with EU leaders. That contrast speaks volumes. Perhaps the most striking signal of Europe's pivot away from DC came from Germany, again this month. According to a Politico report, Berlin's new Euro 83 billion defense procurement plan allocates just 8% to American companies. The rest almost entirely to European manufacturers. This is a big deal. That's a blow for Donald Trump, who has been putting pressure on European countries to continue buying US arms despite the geopolitical turmoil emanating from the White House. Germany has historically been one of the biggest buyers of US arms. Between 2020 and 2024, for example, it signed off on over $17 billion in American military sales. But now it's shifting gears, investing in homegrown systems like the IRIS-T air defense and ship-launched missiles. Why the change? Partly because of Trump's pressure tactics, and substantially because of a broader desire for European strategic autonomy. And also because Europe is realizing that it needs partners who are reliable, responsive, and not prone to geopolitical tantrums. India fits that bill. India has ambition written all over it. The 2047 objective to become a developed country means there's hunger and there are numbers. Whether it's defense deals, tech partnerships, or climate cooperation, New Delhi is showing a level of agility that European businesses and policymakers are beginning to appreciate. So, is Europe abandoning the United States? Not quite. The transatlantic alliance is still strong, and NATO remains the bedrock of European security. But what we are seeing is a diversification of strategic bets. Europe is hedging. It's preparing for a world where America may not always be the dependable partner it once was. And in that world, India is emerging as a key pillar. This pivot isn't just about Trump. It's about a broader realization that the global order is shifting and that new partnerships are needed to navigate the turbulence ahead. India, with its scale, democracy, and strategic nimble-footedness, is stepping into that role. And Europe, under pressure from an unpredictable America, is finally ready to embrace it. Thanks for watching.
MDH की हल्दी मिर्ची धनिया करे कमाल।